Welcome back to my inner anchor. My name's Lee, for those of you who haven't joined me yet, and thank you for joining us, and for those returning, it's good to have you back with me. Today we're going to be stepping into a tool that changed me in ways I never truly expected, and this episode's called Journaling for Clarity, so that clue is in the title there. The tool, of course, is journaling. Not the Instagram version, not the Dear Diary version, not the neat, tidy, aesthetic version. The real version, the messy version, the scribbles of frustration, the stories of sadness, the emotional dump sometimes, the version you turn to when you really don't know what else to do sometimes. Today is about journaling for clarity, how writing became one of the tools that helped me steady myself, understand myself, and meet my life very differently. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed, stuck, angry, confused, maybe just a bit lost in your own head, then hopefully this one will help you steady yourself a bit. You see, it's been well over a year since I finished my first full journal, and the truth is, I didn't start journaling because I wanted to. I started because I'd hit a breaking point. Following a bit of a breakdown conversation, which I've mentioned before, that was a key turning point that happened when I was on holiday with Joe, and we just sat there and spoke, and it all kind of came out after years of suppressing stuff. I went to a talk club therapy group session, and then I went through CBT and counselling as well, and it was during doing CBT therapy at the time that they mentioned journaling. I didn't ever really see any value in journaling, but I had told myself I'd throw myself into this fully, no half measures, no holding back, no pretending I was fine, going things about what I thought were my own way. In reality, they were just the tools that I had to use, or the tools that I had learned to use is probably a better way of putting it. And I said when I went into CBT that I was going to give it 110%, and I wasn't going to back out of anything. Some of those tools didn't work for me in the ways that this podcast might not be for some of you, but I said while I was doing it that I was going to fully immerse myself, trust the process, and try and find those tools that I could put into my arsenal that would help. I didn't really see the value in journaling at all. I didn't see how writing anything down would actually help me in any way. I didn't see how it would change anything, but I did it anyway. And that journal, that very first one in particular, I've wrote a couple since, but that first one in particular ended up holding everything that I didn't know how to carry anymore. Stuff I didn't want to carry anymore. I didn't want to hold it with me. I didn't want to keep bearing that weight of everything. All the pressure, the anger, the things I'd buried, emotions I'd avoided, all the things I had to finally face. They all came out in that very first journal. It became a place where I stopped lying to myself. I stopped performing. I stopped running. There was a beginning of clarity about everything. I could look back and see everything I'd been trying to find was already with me. I didn't have to put on a front. It was just me and the pages. I could write what I wanted to, as rawly, as honestly, as bluntly. Sometimes it was just an emotional dump, and then I looked back and I thought, well, did I really mean that? But a lot of it was really raw, honest. In fact, I look back, I've got the journal with me, and I look back at it now, and even on the first page, we'll go into journaling prompts properly in a bit, but the first journal prompt I have here was, I feel most present when, and I've put the soles of my feet are on the ground when I'm actively listened to and engaged in real conversation. So I knew then in my heart what made me present, feet being on the ground, feeling the earth beneath me, when I'm actually being invested to, when I feel like I'm in that moment. How can I include more of these moments in my life? Take time to talk honestly about how I feel. No mask, no front is what I've written. So I knew I was putting a mask on, I knew I was putting a front on, I knew I wasn't being honest. Then there's a section for Right Good Vibes, being honest with Joe about how I feel. I was hiding from Joe what I was saying, fuel your fire, I am honest, and I am allowed to feel. Empowering myself. Mindful musings. I need to let go of the anger I feel from grief. It's left me with a base level of anger of a 6 out of 10. So anything else massively is exasperated. I need to let go. But how? I knew I had to make a change. I knew I had to. I knew it was needed. I didn't know how to, but I knew this was going to be the start of my journey in finding out. And, it's exactly what journaling did for me. I look back at those early entries now, and it's pretty grounding. It's pretty humbling. It's pretty emotional. Just reading that bit out there, I can see how heavy everything felt, how dark my mindset was, how much I was carrying, and for how long, without realising it, without working what's going on, without being conscious of what I'd been carrying for so long that I hadn't put things down that I should have done. I can see that anger, that it wasn't really anger, it was fear. I was scared of a new way of life, moving forward without my dad. I was scared of people making assumptions on how I was feeling. If I stepped forward, did that mean I no longer missed what I had? That was a big thing for me. I can see the pressure that wasn't really pressure as such. It's just exhaustion. I was tired of carrying that weight for so long. Tired of the expectation to be a certain way, to be a certain somebody, to act in a certain way. Being confused. But was it confusion? I thought I was confused for a long time. And in some ways I was. But when I look back, look at those pages, it was actually avoidance. I was avoiding change, avoiding becoming who I wanted to be, because a part of me felt like I had to stay where I was, because I missed where I was. And like anyone who's experienced grief or any other form of trauma, it does change the trajectory of your life and the path you're travelling, because that path you've been travelling, for want of a better term, has been hit by a bomb. It doesn't exist anymore, and you've got to find a new way. But, and here's the thing, as the pages fold over and I look deeper down the line, I can actually see the moments where things started to shift. No dramatic breakthrough, no big revelation, just small, honest sentences. Even in that first page, literally in that first diary entry, or first journal entry I should say, on my elevate and evolve, I need to let go of the anger, I need to learn how to decompress. The second entry, I need to focus on me and not take on others' problems. More reading, less social media. They're small sentences, but they show that I knew what I needed to change all along. I was just lost. I was caught up in that hamster wheel and it was spinning. You know, just honest sentences like that. And others, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I'm time pretending I'm okay. I don't really know who I am anymore. Those lines were the beginning of the clarity. Because clarity doesn't arrive as a lightning bolt. There's no massive wake-up call and oh wow, okay, now I'm 100% okay. That's not how it works. It arrives as honesty and being present. How am I feeling now in this moment? So let's talk about why journaling actually works. Because it's not something we're taught to sit with ourselves. We're taught to push through, get on with it, stay strong, keep moving, stiff upper lip. But journaling allows you a space to stop, to pause, to reflect on how you truly are in that moment. It keeps you present. You're talking about how you feel at the moment as you're writing. You're not talking about past. You're not talking about future. You're talking about in this moment, how do I feel and what do I want? And when you stop, things rise to the surface. It actually is being proven to slow down your nervous system. Writing is a slower process than you think. It forces your mind to match the pace of your hand when you're writing. So you can sit there in the moment for as long as you wish. It reveals patterns. You start to see the same fears, the triggers, the stories. When you look back, you see your reactions to it, how you respond to certain things. You get to see how your brain works. It separates you from that chaos in your head. Because until you ground something, it isn't real. And thoughts feel massive until you put them onto paper. Then you can look back and see the reality of the situation. Then they shrink. They become manageable. They become honest. That's the reality. Your brain will go into overdrive if you sit with it in your head. And it'll make, something that's manageable seem like true chaos. But putting it onto paper, it grounds it. Yes, it makes it real, but it gives you a place to look at it, not be consumed by it. You can stand back from it. You can go back to it later and reflect and see how far you've come, where you choose to be, where you are. It gives you a place to process stuff, a place to manage, a place to become up with a plan, a way of action, a map to get out and to move forward. It gives you a place to be honest. We are all guilty, and I'm very guilty of this. It's something I'm trying to get better at. But when something is overwhelming us, we're so concerned by others, what they might think of us because of our fears, how our fears have impacted them. Maybe we've not taken a right turn. Maybe we've done something that we're not sure was the right decision to make. Even in small situations, I'm not talking about anything dramatic here, but when your brain's into overdrive, you do really think that you're the worst of the worst. But paper is the best listener, as weird as that and hippie as that sounds. You can tell it everything, and it will tell it back to you. It doesn't judge you. It doesn't give you a funny look. It doesn't make you look weird or feel that, it doesn't give you a filthy look or a crossword back. It takes whatever you're going to give it. So you don't have to perform. There's no need for a mask. There's no judgment. You can literally be as honest and write whatever you're going through in life, whatever's struggling you can put it down onto paper. And it grounds it. It gives it a place. It gives it a statement. And once you've written something down, and I can only talk about my viewpoint here, but I found when I was going through CBT and I was writing every single entry on this, I'm looking at this diary now, this journal, and all along the way I feel, I'm looking back at it as we speak and give myself that time to ground the little annoyances of the day, to be honest about how I felt. Because in certain situations, in working environments for example, or with family or friendship groups, sometimes we're not honest about how certain things make us feel, because as a race we're too worried about what other people felt, and you don't wish to upset anyone or cause an unnecessary drama, so you swallow it. But that sort of stuff builds up, man. And literally on one of my things I've put as a fuel my fire, I will have my say. People may not like it, but I will speak my mind. And that was something I was guilty of for a long time, was not doing that anymore. I used to, kind of to the point of being not aggressive, but I was certainly known for being blunt. And being a Scorpio, I get told I've got a sting in my tail sometimes by some people I love very much. But giving yourself that honesty and no judgment, grounding everything's a really good way. I could ground it at the end of the day. I could look at it the next day and think, you've had that 24-hour period, or however long it might be, to step back, to look at it, come back to respond rather than to react. It's an emotional thing. It gives you that distance, that time in your brain to really, really fully process whatever it was you're going through. We've all had it. I had it this week. This podcast is never about being perfect or whatever. I was in a situation this week where unfortunately I've been in a bit of a car accident. Thankfully, pain medication is good. But I've got a sprained neck and I've got bad whiplash and some bruising, and generally feel like I've been beat up a little bit. And that was an accident where I wasn't at fault. I was sat in stationary at the time, and another person was driving along, not paying attention, by their own admission, came into the village speeding and ploughed a van into the back of my car. And there's obviously a lot of emotions that come through with that. Anger, as we spoke about last week, being one of them. But I've journaled, I've kept my calm, I've kept my cool. And you go back and you look at it and you think, okay, the reality is, yes, I'm in pain, yes, I'm sore. Yes, I've had to have 2 days off work on the sick because I just couldn't sleep for 2 nights until they sorted and made me out what pain medication was appropriate. But it could have been a lot worse. It gives you perspective. It creates clarity. You can't always understand what's going on in your head sometimes, and you certainly can't understand stuff when you refuse to articulate it and refuse to talk about it. And you don't need to be the fanciest writer in the world to journal. It's not about being Byron-esque or poetic. It's about being honest, being true, being present, writing how you truly feel down, being a witness to your own truth, to your own story. And some people think it's complicated and you've got to do it at certain times or certain ways, or there's only one way to do it, and that's not true. I mean, I could sit you down how and talk about how I actually journal, because it ain't complicated. I don't set a timer, and there's no strict method. I don't try to make it neat. I mean, if you were to look at some of these journals, some of it is barely scribbles, but I know what those scribbles mean. I sit down, I take a breath, and I write whatever my hand's going to tell me. Sometimes it's a sentence. Sometimes it's a page or 3. Sometimes it's a rant. Sometimes it's a whisper. But I guess the 3 kind of things I kind of followed on, like the first journal I ever wrote. I got one just online because I didn't know how I was going to fill it, and I figured I needed some prompts because I didn't know what I was going to like. So I got a vibe journal, and it was great. And the prompts on mine were things like, ask you different prompts each day. But the regular ones were things like good vibes, which was like, what do you feel positive about of the day, fueling my fire, giving yourself a pat on the back, and what went well, and taking ownership of that, because I'm dreadful at taking compliments. And I was go, it wasn't me, blah blah blah. Even with amazing things that I've managed to do, Just Push Play happens, and we sat at the Apex and we raised, the best year we ever had was the Crows year, sold out just past pandemic, absolutely sold out, rammed Apex. We raised $6,500 for the hospice. It was incredible, biggest year to date in terms of like, a single show of that amount. But that was at the venue, and then we raised another sort of $2,000. It was about $8,500 we raised. And even when people congratulate on me, that was a lot of work and a lot of flying by the seat of your pants, and a stressful scenario where none of us knew how to act and respond in that situation, because none of us have been through that pandemic ever. I still was going, but if it wasn't for you guys, then it didn't happen. And that's true. That is true. If people don't buy tickets, and we're seeing it up and down the country at the moment with gigs and with events closing and venues closing, people don't support it, then it goes in one direction. But equally, if you don't put it out there, it doesn't happen at all. So you got to take its responsibility for your actions, but you also need to take a little bit of pride from what you carry out and what you do achieve. So that was the Fuel Your Fire prompt. They had mindful musings, which was what was really on your mind, what was really, really soaking up your brain power, what was it locked into. And then Elevate and Evolve, which was like, how can you make this better? Looking at what you've written down today, how could you have responded better in that day, with the knowledge of hindsight, right? And I've kind of taken those and shaped them a little bit more for me, because that's what you do. You write down what you feel, and you make sure what you've got works for you. So that's shaped into things. So the 3 things that kind of shaped my journaling was sort of being honest over being perfect, not trying to sound wise, not trying to make sense, being messy, doing the brain dump thing, just getting it all out there, writing what I felt, not what I should feel. Don't think about it, just be honest. Don't write what you thought you should be and how you think you should respond. Be honest. Let your feelings onto the page, not what you're thinking, because there's 2 very different things. And then curiosity more than judging. So instead of thinking, why am I like this, I asked, what's happening right now? What's gone on today that's triggered that response? And those shifts sort of changed everything in it. There are many prompts that you can use. I went through a few earlier. But things I use now are things like, what am I carrying today that feels heavy, that feels weighty? You know, be honest about that. Are you carrying stuff from a couple of days ago? I am. This is a podcast about being honest. I'm totally carrying things from, being hit in the accident. If anyone asks me what happened, then I get angry because I was sat in stationary traffic and the van went into the back of me, and not only that, but on top of that, the guy wasn't exactly what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't exactly helpful when it came to, he didn't want to give me his insurance details, he didn't want to give me his contact details, which triggered an emotional response. And are you carrying stuff from the day before? Have you let it go? Has it been solved? What are you avoiding? What's going on that you're trying to distract yourself from? That was one of the things I was really, really bad at. The biggest thing I ever tried to distract myself from was the grief from losing my dad. And I avoided that for a long time. Avoided processing it. What do I need to be honest about? What is really going on today? And be honest about it. You can tell the page. You could literally write anything on a piece of paper. And this is you don't need a fancy journal. Grab a notebook, write it on a post-it note, fag packet, wherever. Just write it down and ground it. Why am I afraid of what will happen if I slow down? What if I don't do that thing that I feel like I should do? Or I'm under pressure into doing? What if I slow down? What if I take that time to do it properly? Does the world end? Does anyone die? No. Most of the time, no. What truth am I not ready to say out loud yet? Sometimes we're not ready to be honest to people about how we're feeling, any experiences we've had, any trauma that we've been through, the way our mindset is running. But you can write it down because your journals are private. You can just write it down, get it off your chest, and let it be until you're ready to talk face to face with someone about something. This is one I really like to think though. What would I write if no one ever reads this? What would you honestly write on paper if no one was to read it? If you're being 100% honest without feeling like you have to miss bits out because of other people's emotions and reactions, or edit it a certain way so that it's, for want of a better term, maybe not as raw, maybe it's a bit more what's the word I'm looking for, conscious of other people's emotions and how they may respond, so you don't say things the whole truth or in a real authentic voice. Sometimes you just edit yourself, a really unedited version. Make sure all your journal is unedited, raw and honest. Don't try and sound clever, don't try and sound smart, don't try and use big words. Be messy, scribble it out, write it as quick as you can if possible, because that's where your most honest is going to be. And if anyone sees it, well, they shouldn't be looking at your journal, should they? And anyone who you might feel like you need to share stuff with in your journal, then they should love you enough to not take things personally. And then there's many prompts. Many. Where in my life am now, my alignment? What do I need to let go of? What do I want? What part of me needs attention today? And that's a pretty important one, where am I at today? And the prompts aren't about fixing yourself. They're about meeting yourself. Joining yourself from where you are. It's a pretty epic world out there right now. There's a lot of anger, a lot of violence, a lot of scary times. Just before recording this, a friend of mine sent me a video from our town, our little sleepy Bury St Edmunds, where seemingly not much happens, but there was a fight going on out in town, some sort of Friday night classic thing. I mean, when I was a kid, someone got a bust nose, but that was kind of about it, and that's not cool either. But there was no weapons. And in this video you see a little ruckus insured, and then this lad pulls up, and he could be 16, 17, and he's got a friggin' machete, and he's just waving it around. There's a lot of violence right now. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of misunderstood. There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of language being thrown around that 5 years ago no one would have said, because we all knew it was wrong, and it wasn't right, and it's still not wrong or right. So be honest, be true, be respectful with others. Meet yourself where you are, and if you don't feel safe to, in that moment, if you see anything like that and it's horrendous, don't feel like that was your responsibility either, because it's not your responsibility to stand in the way and put yourself in danger if anyone's wielding any kind of weapon or whatever. But I personally believe it is all our responsibility to call out ill behaviour before it gets to that. And that's not, I'm not telling anyone to get involved. If everyone's got a knife run in the other direction, and don't get involved with with that kind of level of threat onto your own well-being and health. That's not what I'm saying. I just think that we as our society need to look after everyone a bit more now. I think that's becoming really apparent. But be honest in your journaling, write it down. Whatever your truth is, be true to it. Meet yourself where you're at. There's a lot of, going back to what I was trying to say, sorry, I went on a little tangent there, but there's a lot of anger out there right now, and there's a lot of stress, cost of living, fuel pricing, everything going up except wages, and that can cause a lot of pressure on people, and everyone's probably feeling a little overwhelmed right now. So look after yourselves, alright? And before I do journaling, I do like a little breath work, so you might want to do that, and we're just going to go through that. Is literally a very short bit of breath work, and it's mainly just to clear my head, because like I said, there's so much going on in the world, and there's a lot of noise, and it can consume ourselves somewhat sometimes, can't it? So I just do this. So if you'd like to do it with me, then please do. And it is literally a little couple of minutes of breath work, and it's literally just get yourself comfy, drop those shoulders, pause, let your breath find that natural rhythm, feel that weight of your body, feel the pull of gravity, feel the still point beneath all the chaos. Place one hand on your chest and one on your stomach, and now breathe in through your nose and out through the mouth. Let your breath slow down, let your mind soften, let your body settle, and feel that natural rhythm of your chest rising and falling. And just ready when you ask yourself, what's true and honest for me right now? Another breath in and another breath out. And that's where I start with my journaling. Just a natural breath work to steady your rhythm, bring you back to center a bit, get your head in the present moment. Journaling's done a lot for me, but it hasn't fixed life. That's not what I'm here to say it is. None of the grounding techniques I use fix anything, but it gives me an outlet for everything. It didn't make everything easy. It didn't turn me into some perfect version of myself. I've told you, this week it was the car accident, and I was angry about that, naturally. In other situations it's been other things and other emotions. This podcast has never been about a perfect life or the most zen of moments. It's about me wanting to showcase tools that I find to ground and realign myself. It's about being honest with myself, with you guys who are kind enough to listen, to everyone in my life. Because I'm not sat here at the minute in, as I've said before, white flowing pajamas and skipping through fields. I'm sat in my living room. My setup is very raw. I don't go into a studio to do this podcast. It's sat in my living room. I've got my crystals by me, which I'm going to go and do a session on those because they've become a real grounding piece for me. I've got my incense on the go. Again, sensory stuff helps. And my microphone that I use for my radio show. And that's it. It's real raw and honest here, guys, and that's all I ever wanted to be. The reality of everything. I'm not a namaste, give me 50 quid kind of person. That's not how it works. And as I say, journaling, like any grounding technique, it didn't fix me. It didn't make everything easy and perfect, but it did something far more important than that. It made me honest. It made me grounded. It made my head clearer. It made me more myself. Because you know what? Life still throws its punches. And I keep saying it, but today, this week, it's been obviously the car accident. And, other days it's other things, and life will still throw its punches. I've got a very close family member to me going through a cancer battle, and that's tough. But I meet those differently now. I'm a bit steadier about it, more anchored, hence using the title for the inner anchor throughout all of these podcasts, and furthermore there is going to be more stuff coming out, so more of that another day. But it made me more anchored, more steady, more aware of what's mine to carry and what isn't mine to carry, what I've got control of, what I can and what I can't do, what's my responsibility and what isn't. And that's the gift of journaling. Not clarity as an outcome, but clarity as practice. Keep writing, keep journaling, and I'll be able to see the patterns, see what triggers me, see where I am, see where I want to be, and in time how to get there. It's a rough place out there at the minute, guys, so take care of yourselves. If you've been feeling overwhelmed, stuck, angry, lost, try writing. Not to be perfect, not to be impressive, not trying to be smart, not even really to be productive, just to be honest. Because clarity doesn't come from thinking harder. It comes from slowing down enough to hear yourself. And journaling is one of the simplest, most powerful ways to do that. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you guys for doing the work, the real work with yourselves. Come home to yourself, right? Next episode is another grounding practice that I use a lot. We've touched upon it, and it's breath work for minds, for busy minds. So I'll see you next week. Have a great week. Stay grounded, stay steady, stay anchored. Take care.